Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are. Good day to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shivani Khare, your host for the day. I take great pleasure in welcoming all of you to the day 2 of Global Emerging Tech Summit 2021, organized by University of Emerging Technologies, co-sponsored by the Emerging Tech Foundation, Computer Society of India, Global Engineering Teams Council, and International Federation of Engineering Education Societies. University of Emerging Technologies is about E5, evangelize, educate, empower, enlighten, and engage about emerging technologies. This conference is about bringing emerging tech closer to the next generation of professionals and making effective use of virtual education. We are delivering a series of 6 lectures ranging across various topics in emerging tech over 3 weekends, that is 6 days, Saturday and Sunday, till the 2nd of May. Every session is opened by a keynote speaker who is an eminent personality from either tech or education, followed by the lecture of the day. The attendees are encouraged to send in their questions via chat, Q&A session, tweet, email, and then we'll have a separate session for the questions and answers soon after the completion of the lecture. After that, Mr. Prasad Mahudri, CEO of University of Emerging Technologies, will deliver his closing remarks and also answer some of your questions. Now I take the pleasure in introducing a keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Ala K. Ashmawi. Dr. Ala K. Ashmawi is Special Advisor with ABET, the global accreditor of academic programs in engineering, computing engineering technology, and applied and natural sciences. Formerly, he was the Dean of Engineering at the American University in Dubai and Professor of Civil Engineering in the University of South Florida. He is the founding member of Minaris and serves as its Managing Director. He earned his master's and PhD degree from Purdue University, USA, and his bachelor's degree in civil engineering with distinction from Alexandria University. Dr. Ashmawi has been a member of GEDC since 2007. He has authored 2 book chapters and co-authored more than 100 papers in his field. Dr. Ala K. Ashmawi's technical expertise is in geotechnical engineering. Unfortunately, due to some unavoidable reasons today, Dr. Ala could not join us. However, he has sent us a pre-recorded video of his keynote speech. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look.
Hello and welcome. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the Global Emerging Tech Summit organized by the University of Emerging Technologies.
Is the video audible?
The digital transformation in higher education, which started almost 10 years ago, has been greatly accelerated following the COVID-19 pandemic. The changes we've witnessed in content delivery methods and the pervasive integration of e-learning into university curricula present new challenges to academic convention and traditions and pose a substantial burden on faculty and higher education institutions. While the debate continues in terms of how millennial and post-millennial students learn, what role traditional classrooms play in tomorrow's education continuum, and how the society's perception of higher education will evolve, it is important to continue to highlight the role of academic institutions, both traditional and non-traditional, as providers of relevant and current academic content that is consistent with present and future societal needs, and as instillers of innovation and entrepreneurship, critical thinking, intellectual curiosity, and lifelong learning skills in their graduates, because all of these skills are important in determining or in making sure that learners continue to learn and know how to learn new things. There has been considerable discussion lately concerning the new norms, what we call the new norms in higher education. So we're witnessing a global movement, basically, where students got used to acquiring academic and non-academic knowledge from the comfort of their home or even their bedroom. So it will be quite a challenge for those who wish to bring or hope that things will go back to the way they were before the pandemic. I'm talking about on-campus lectures in large lecture halls, the traditional university lecturer, or what we call the sage on the stage, standing in front of an audience of students sitting in rows. Students are now used to staring at a computer monitor or a smart device screen instead of a whiteboard. And this is where they get their information from. They are resenting traditional exams and quizzes and opting for open book assessments, take-home assignments, and more qualitative assessments. But we really have to be careful thinking that university campuses are a vestige of the past. When you come to think about it in more depth, is there really much of a difference between somebody staring at a whiteboard in a classroom and that person staring at a smart tablet at home? Can we seriously make a distinction between listening to a professor in class or listening to a lecture on a mobile device? For sure, there are advantages to acquiring the knowledge at your own pace on an electronic device, in the comfort of your home, where you have the luxury of replaying, fast forwarding on demand. But there are also enormous advantages to one-on-one interactions and group dynamics when it comes to learning. And this is where adaptive and interactive online education can fill in the gap. For sure, we're set for a future where hybrid learning will prevail. I am sure of that. We're going to see a combination of face-to-face and virtual content delivery. And this is really where non-traditional providers, such as the University of Emerging Technologies, can fill in the gap. It is also important for all of us to realize that with the exponential pace of progress and evolution of technical knowledge, traditional higher education institutions, traditional universities, are not equipped with the tools and the qualities conducive to rapid adaptation of curricula. It takes a very long time, relatively speaking, for universities to change a course content or a curriculum. And by the time emerging technologies such as blockchain, cloud computing, smart contracts, cryptocurrencies make their way into mainstream academic curricula, newer fields of knowledge will have emerged. So the role of highly evolving and rapidly shifting education systems will become more and more prominent in complementing and augmenting the skills of the workforce. The University of Emerging Technologies is breaking new grounds and shifting higher education paradigms by providing educational content that is current, relevant, and industry-driven. The university provides certification courses for students all around the world within a state-of-the-art virtual platform where the content is being delivered. The university is a world leader in adaptive learning, where students can choose from a variety of modules that suit their goals and needs at their own pace. And with live classes and 24/7 live labs and live support, students are provided with broad access to real-life projects, as well as industry-oriented and job-focused content. By building upon project-based and experiential learning methodologies, the university derives its content from industry experts in the various emerging technology fields, such as machine learning, cybersecurity, global computing, and data science. And in fact, by participating at the Global Emerging Tech Summit 21, you will get a glimpse of what many of these rapidly evolving fields entail. So in conclusion, I wish you the very best, and I hope you will enjoy learning from experts from all around the world. Best wishes and stay safe.
It was a wonderful speech. Thank you for the video, sir. Moving ahead, I would like to introduce a speaker for the day, Mr. Shay Zandani. Mr. Shay Zandani is one of the founding members establishing the Information Warfare Department in the Israeli Air Force. After leaving government work, he entered into the commercial areas of cybersecurity. Eventually, he became a leader of the two largest cybersecurity consulting companies, PwC and KPMG, where he led some exciting cybersecurity projects worldwide, helping companies to investigate and respond to some major breaches and events. Mr. Shay Zandani has also built a successful cybersecurity startup in the field of cybersecurity risk management, which was acquired by MasterCard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Mr. Shay Zandani. Sir, please.
Hey guys, I hope you can hear me now. Thank you so much for joining. As Shivani mentioned, I will try to share with you some of my experience in the next 45 minutes or so, and then I'll try hard to leave some time for questions, so for some Q&As. I already seen some of the potential students starting to greet and meet, and I'm sure, and I hope you won't be shy. I'm not shy, so try to do your best there. And I have only a few slides, and I'd like to share with you some of those. And maybe before that, I'll talk a little bit more about the agenda. I hope you can see my screen right now. And Chandra, thank you for noting. That's a good feedback. And what I'd like to go through, and you know, Prasad and myself, we are going back long time, and we had a lot of discussions about the main topics and what should we cover, and how should the University of Emerging Technologies to deal with so many different things and innovation, and what are the major topics right now. And I'm sure you all agree that cyber is one of the most, I would say, interesting, but also important issues that our world is facing these days. And I'm sure that some of you already, explore and had some kind of experience, especially with these COVID days, once we are into that. So what I tried to do, Shivani already introduced me, and we all heard Dr. Allah about, you know, learning from your bedroom or your couch. And this is one of the reasons why I would like to focus on what are the main objectives of today's lecture, and why cybersecurity and why now. Besides that, I'll try to talk a little bit more about top cybersecurity and risk trends for 2021, and maybe even for 2022. I will use some of Gartner's, and I hope some of you knows Gartner and how important they are. And I'll try to focus on some of the trends they've mentioned, but I use that mostly to cover a few other topics, and maybe use them as a teaser for you to have some questions and queries. Last but not least, I'll talk a little bit about cybersecurity education and the market opportunity, which I'm sure this is why we are having many participants tonight, or for me, it's almost 1 o'clock at night, but for you, I guess for most of you, it's like 11 p.m., is it? Or something like that. Sorry, 11 a.m. or something like that. So good morning to you all. Last and not least, I'll be happy to take any questions, any queries, so feel free to use some. Before going into some of the topics that I've covered here, as Shivani introduced me, I'm pretty much dealing with cybersecurity all my life. And maybe before even talking a little bit about my experience, what are those odd letters that next to my name? the CISSP, CISA, CSAM, CRISC, and I'm sure some of you are asking those, or if somebody in the audience, feel free to raise a hand or to let me know. I know it's not easy with this kind of mingle audience between YouTube and Zoom, but yet, and I would say one of the great things I believe that our very interesting society about cybersecurity has is about having some global certification. I'll get back to that later on. But CISSP is a very interesting certification from IC Square. CISA, CSIM, and CISA, CSAM, and CRISC are the global certification from ISACA, which is another non-for-profit, very interesting global organization to have some certification on cyber and risk management and internal audit, IT audit controls. And one of the great things that I believe the University of Emerging Technology is doing is collaborating with some of those organizations in order to bring those global certificates into the world and to share some of that knowledge, which could be an extremely important issue. By the way, just to give you a sense, here in the US, if you have one of those certificates, it's about $20,000 difference in your salary. So imagine how good it could be interesting for the long run and why this is so important to have all those kind of global certifications and to keep them relevant. And I'll get back to that later on when I'll cover the market opportunity there. So a little bit about myself. As I've said, I'm pretty much dealing with cybersecurity, information security all my life, as Shivani mentioned before. When I was a soldier, and I guess most of you know, and we've got some great relationship with India, and we're doing a lot of great things with India. I got a very interesting request when I started my career within the Army, not just to deal with how to bomb the IT enemy systems, but how to manipulate the data. And for me, it was a James Bond movie back then. I was like, I didn't know anything about it as a young soldier, as a young officer, but I've begun to take, I would say, courses and to learn. And I found myself running a very interesting department of information warfare, and not just, cyber offensive, as we call it, but offense. But later on, after doing some very interesting proof of concept, taking care of the cyber defense of the Israeli Air Force systems. And that was extremely important and interesting. As part of my career, we talked a little bit about ISACA. I've been chosen to be the ISACA president of the Israeli chapter, which was an amazing opportunity. And I urge you to learn more if you're interested about certification and about cyber. This is one of the very interesting organizations to get your global certificate, as I've mentioned earlier, and to learn more and to get involved with your community, with your organization. By the way, it's also an amazing opportunity for you to get some networking and to find, your next career path and all that. And of course, here we'll be more than happy to help. As I mentioned, when I've left the Army, I've joined PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and after a couple of years, I've been asked to be the CEO of the Global Risk Management Solutions department there as a daughter company. And after more than 10 years of doing a very interesting projects all around the world, especially, of course, in Israel, in the US, and in Europe, I felt like, some hitching about innovation. And I established Strategic. Strategic come from cyber strategic decision. And, I spend night and days with Prasad talking about that and how should we do that? What are the major things we should focus, and how should we deal with cyber risk management, and how should we bring this kind of innovative technology into the field? I'll get back to strategic later on when I'm going to talk about some of the most interesting trends that cyber security have these days, and why I still believe that strategic is relevant. Luckily, strategic was acquired by MasterCard recently, and now they're adopting this technology in order to get some very interesting technology and innovative technology in the market. After living and studying strategic, as part of that, I've joined KPMG, and I've been the cyber partner who was in charge for the insurance sector here in the US. I was based in New York, and we've done some great things together. And now I'm back trying to, to find the next cybersecurity startup out there. So back to innovation, back to creating new things, and who knows, maybe I can get some work to some of you guys later on. So this is a very interesting, I would say, life career. I've spent more than 30 years in the industry, in the army, and I believe that pretty much shaped my knowledge and my interest in that field. As part of that career, I was spending a lot of time on education, and as you all know, education doesn't stop, and doesn't start when you start your work. This is extremely important to keep training yourself, to keep learning, and to keep yourself updated with the new technology, with the updates out there in the market. So I've done my master's degree in computer science, and later on, Prasad and myself shared the Kellogg Recanati, the Northwestern University, our executive MBA, which was some great fun, but also a very interesting study. So this is a little bit about myself and why it was so important for me to spend so much time about it. And believe me, this is not about myself, but it's mostly about the certification, the continuous education, and make yourself, I would say, relevant in the market. The main objective of today, and I let myself borrow those slides from Prasad's and the University of Emerging Technologies introduction slides, is about the mission and the goals. So before even starting, our today goal is the last sentence: how to expose a student to emerging topics of cybersecurity. So this is my goal for this lecture and this short presentation. But if we are going 2 steps back, the mission is pretty much, as Dr. Ala presented before, how should we, as a global, in society, what should we do better? How should we leverage our knowledge, our experience, and how should we bring you guys into that, I would say, pool of knowledge with today's new technology, with today, I would say, changes in the market, and we'll cover that later on when I cover some of the challenges that we have in cyber. So we want to empower the current and continuing students to gain more role-based and deployable skills with experimental learning, and to make sure that you're involved with some of the changes and what is happening out there. So those are the main, I would say, mission and goals for the university in general, but also for this session in specific. So starting to talk a little bit more about cyber, and I hope technology will help me here, I would like to share with you a few short video clips that could bring, I would say, some of the interest that we are having nowadays around cyber. And I've tried to take a couple of topics between the military, the financials market, and what we call the electric grid, and to share with you some of very interesting things that I've took from YouTube out there, nothing that I've invented, but it could bring you into the topic and cover in a very short video clips some of what is happening out there. So I hope we can see that right now. And Prasad, just nod your hand if you could share, if I'm sharing my screen here.
The United States Navy.
I can't see the video, but I could hear the thing. So I think you'll have to share that window probably, Shay.
Sure. Let me know, Prasad, if you can see that now. Can you hear it?
Okay.
The United States Navy is at risk right now, this very minute. Wave after wave of
Sir, you
unwanted
will have to
intrusions
stop
capable
sharing
of
and start
striking
sharing
anywhere on
again.
the planet, including right here at home. The probes are invisible, but they could potentially cripple our forces with as much devastation as any bomb or missile. This is all occurring in cyberspace, the worldwide domain where communications, intelligence gathering, kinetic operations, logistics, and command and control can be threatened at network speed. But the U.S. Navy stands ready to repel this threat and to maintain superiority in this new operational domain. The cyber warriors of U.S. Fleet Cyber Command and U.S. 10th Fleet help operate and assure the security of Navy networks around the world, providing powerful cyber capabilities necessary for warfighting superiority across the full spectrum of military operations. Any entity with access to the internet can operate in cyberspace, including criminals,
Stop
terrorists,
sharing the presentation and share the other window. I think you only shared this window, although we can hear that. Yeah, now you run the thing and probably that will work. You just run the YouTube, then see what happens. Share that. No, I think it'll have the same problem. Try.
Can you see?
You can't see the video, Shay. We're able
The
to hear
United
it, but
States
not
Navy
video.
is at risk. Right?
Yeah.
Sir, you have to stop sharing and start sharing the video screen.
Stop sharing your PowerPoint, but start sharing the video screen, the YouTube. Then it will work.
That's weird.
No problem. No. So why didn't you do one thing? Can I suggest something? Shivani, why didn't you run the video for him and then he will show back?
Don't worry about it. Let me just a second, and we'll do that in a different way.
Yeah, no
Sorry.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Take your time.
Now I hope you can see both. And
That's
we can do that.
one Hail Mary effort.
Sure.
That's right.
That's good. Now I can see only that.
Of striking anywhere on the planet, including right here at home. The probes are invisible, but they could potentially cripple.
It's okay, Shai. I think if you allow, Shivani can show the video for you, and then you
No,
can.
she can't.
She can. Oh, I see. She doesn't have.
Maybe you can share the link. Then Shivani will play it.
Okay, so we'll try different. So I think you've heard all about that, and we've heard that already a couple of times. So we'll try to go back to the other ones. Let me just share my presentation once again. And I hope that will work now. Can you see this, Prasad, now? The presentation?
It's not full screen mode. I'm seeing your next slide and all that. Yeah.
Now it's better.
It's better now. Yeah. Now, if you run the video, if it doesn't run, let's see. You want to run the video, or you don't want to run the video?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I think the main idea was already got there. So I think, as I said, between the military, the different things around financial organizations, and we all know how challenging is some of our very, I would say, strategic infrastructure, like electricity, like water, like different things around us. All that, especially now with COVID and what is happening these days in the world, make it so important for us to protect our important assets. And the reason why I've chosen the military, financial, and electric grid is exactly because those are some of the main topics that around cybersecurity that makes it extremely important, extremely interesting. And I've got a lot of queries from different people. What are the major challenges? What is happening these days? Why are we so interested, and why cybersecurity is a top topic in most of the risks that organizations identify as number one risk? And I think that I've took 5 different topics here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them that nowadays are pretty much on top of minds on most of what is happening for the different people as you and I, but also for some of the organizations out there. So the first thing is extremely interesting issue: how to increase public pressure to secure personal information. And we all know about some of the major breaches lately of Facebook and Twitter and so many other social security numbers, and so many social companies out there, social networking companies that pretty much put each and every one of us in a very, I would say, not that good position about our data, about what is happening with our data, and how should we or even control the data, and can we trust those guys out there to control it? And what exactly is happening? I mean, why do we have all those breaches? Why people are using this very, some of us are asking ourselves, why even bother? Why those hackers are really care about, Prasad Mauduri or Shay Zandani's personal data? What are they doing with that? And how they can use that in order to gain, I would say, more interesting assets out there. So there are a few questions. There are a few answers for those, I would say, simple questions. First, nobody knows. In the beginning, when I'm getting Shay Zandani's personal data, I don't know exactly who Shay Zandani is or what kind of access he has, and if it's relevant for me as a hacker, or even later on, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the risks as a state. Maybe Shay has some very interesting, I would say, access control to things that I could later on leverage. And those are extremely important topics, which here in the US, we were exposed some of the, I would say, breaches to some very sensitive military network access in order to either ransom some of those guys later on in their lives, or even to get some very sensitive access to some very, I would say, interesting and sensitive systems that those guys were using. So besides that, we all know about some of the very interesting regulation these days in Europe, the Gdpr, here in the US, that we call the California Practice Act, CCPA, and there's a lot of pressure on secure personal data and information. The second one is, we all know that as we've seen here, there's too much data, but not enough information. And those are one of the major, I would say, challenges right now we have in the field. And I'm not sure if you could follow me in that, but when I'm talking about data, it could be data points, it could be alerts. I'm not sure if some of you are familiar with the statistics, but we're talking about more than 1 billion cyber attack every second. I'll repeat the number because it's something that, you know, somebody who hear that for the first time could not digest it. 1 billion events every second. So imagine, and I'm talking only here in the US. So imagine how big that number should be globally. And when we are talking about that, it means that somebody out there is trying to breach Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase. Prasad, give me, what's the biggest bank in India that I should threaten?
I think State Bank of India.
State Bank of India. So imagine those huge number of cyber attacks. And when I'm talking about data, is that specific ping point that somebody is trying now to ping or to breach or to use a specific exposure in order to get there. But when I'm talking about information, I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about how do those guys are doing it? What's the flow? What is the attack vector? Who are the criminals who are trying to do that? And how can we aggregate all this data into one place that could educate us and we could learn more about trends, pattern of behavior, and how can we use that in order to prevent some of those breaches or some of those vulnerabilities once relevant. The third topic I'd like to share with you is more about the adoption of new technology. And we all know that, especially these days, a lot of companies, you know, if we talked before, like 10 years ago, many of the government institutions or major financial institutions, when you talk to them about mobile or when you've talked to them about cloud, they were like, whoa, no, we don't need cloud. Everything is on-prem, everything is in our data center. We control the data, we make sure it's safe, and this is on us. But suddenly, when we are talking to so many, even medium banks, I'm not even talking nowadays about the big banks that already transfer some of their databases and infrastructure to the cloud, but can you compare the capabilities of Amazon or Microsoft or Google Cloud? Can you even compare them, the capabilities around security, to a small medium bank in Israel, or even here in the US, or even there in India? Think about how much money and efforts and man hours and people do those guys need to invest in order to protect to a level of the data about their clients, about their operational productions, about their systems. Think how much they need to invest in order to protect their assets, rather using a much more safe environment, maybe on Microsoft Azure or in the Google Cloud or even at Amazon Cloud, AWS. So nowadays, when you're talking to those guys about cloud, about should they transfer to the cloud, suddenly the discussion is coming from a different perspective. Suddenly they understand that they have limited resources, especially if we are talking about, what is happening out there in the cloud and in the internet environment. And suddenly we know that maybe moving to the cloud could be a better solution for some of those organizations. Few other technologies that we are talking about, how to adopt them, and I guess most of you are familiar with the cryptocurrencies and some of the virtual money that is out there, and those are an extremely important opportunity for us all for the long run. But saying that, of course, cybersecurity and keeping that safe, about the wallets, about transactions, about all that, this is something that you cannot ignore. So, of course, and we are familiar with all that, adopting new technologies pretty much means that you should invest a lot about cybersecurity and how to protect it. And one thing that I want to share with you here is, if I'm talking about 20 years ago, when I've left the Army, the conceptual thinking about countries like Russia, China, Iran, and a few other companies and countries out there to attack Boeing or to attack a medium bank in the US or even in India was something that people were not thinking about that as an option. And why is that? Because we were thinking back then, 30, 40 years ago, that if Iran or if Russia is going to attack something, it's going to be the Department of Defense in the US, or specific space kind of organization in order to get something. But suddenly there's a lot of activities from different attack vectors and attack criminals out there in the market to use those specific, I would say, opportunities or exposures or vulnerabilities to gain either knowledge. And we all heard about some of the universities out there in the world that have been hacked by countries in order to get into the COVID vaccine capabilities or databases in order to shortcut some of their research and all that. And in some cases, we all know about some of the countries out there in the world, like North Korea these days, who are even using ransom attack on some of the organization as part of their financial capabilities and budget capabilities. So there's a very interesting, I would say, evolving threat landscape out there in the market that we should pay a very, very interesting, I would say, attention into it, and how should we, as a global world, global society, should deal with. Last but not least is how are we dealing with some of the, I would say, challenges that things that are happening in the world these days are creating for us. And I'll talk about it in a second about some of the trends, but think about the world 18 months ago, 30, 14 months ago, before COVID. I mean, we were going to the office, at least most of us. We were doing our work. We were doing our study in classrooms. And suddenly, in less than 2-3 weeks, we've been curfew. There was kind of a siege. Nobody went out. And to be honest with you guys, here in the US, everybody were thinking, it's going to be for 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. Nobody in March a year ago could even think that the world will pretty much stop. And now we're going to keep working from home. We're going to keep studying from home. Our kids going to do that. And suddenly, all the environment has changed. And of course, cybersecurity with it, because suddenly you need to protect you need to protect the organizations, not only for people who are working within the different or within its perimeter, suddenly we are talking about the same people from the outside are your employees, your third-party vendors, your clients, and of course, could be somebody who's trying to hack your systems and to breach your security. So all of that together are some of the major challenges that we are having these days, and we need to kind of, be extremely cautious about what is happening out there. Prasad, anything on your side that you want
to? I think it's good. Good. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Now, and this is interesting here. Some of the trends, top cybersecurity and risk trends for 2021, and this is, as I've said earlier, it's based on a very interesting document and research from Gartner. And this is how they kind of put it there. But I'm going to use some of their, I would say, trends that they've mentioned here in order to share with you some of my, I would say, experience or trends that are out there in the market. The first, and we've covered that early, a little bit about location-independent security. I will get into that in more details. The security organization evolution and what is happening in the organization. What are the major trends there? How do the organizations are trying to adopt into this new and innovative, I would say, changes in the market these days. And of course, some of the security technology evolution and where we are there and what should we do with that. So if I'm going to drill down into the first topic about location independent security. And this is some of, I would say, one of the most interesting topics that we are facing these days here in the US, but also around the world. We talked a little bit about how the last pandemic pretty much changes our way of thinking, our way of behavior, what are we expecting from where, from who, and suddenly remote working is a major topic. And as I've said before, it opens so many challenges, and this is a very interesting trend here because I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the statistics here, but 80-something% of the organizations here in the US said that they're never going to go back to 6 days, 5 days working from the office environment. So it means that from now on, we need to support and to be open to an organization who is suddenly, and I'll try to do it a little bit more, I would say, to tease you a little bit, that I'm working with Bank of America network with the same Wi-Fi that my son is playing Minecraft. Let me say that again, because a lot of people don't really understand the challenge there. From the same Wi-Fi that I'm surfing the web and I'm accessing Bank of America most sensitive data about its clients, about its transactions. I'm not even talking about Department of Defense or very other sensitive nuclear capabilities of the electricity grid and all that. But in the same time, my son has finalized his day in school and now he's playing Minecraft with 100 other kids around the world. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the fact that now your Wi-Fi network is not just Zandani family network, but this is some network that 100 other kids, and who knows if they are kids or they are potential attackers, are using the same resources. And this is extremely important because when we got into that pandemic environment, you usually work in a different VPN, you usually download something to your machine, but suddenly that machine, and at least here in the US, not all of the employees got their own laptops. They were using their home computer, desktop, as I've said before, that their kids were playing, that they have their own very sensitive family pictures. And suddenly now they're using the same box to get into their bank account, to their bank employee, and all that. So this is a very interesting trend that we're going to keep seeing out there in the market, and this is something that we should pay attention. The other thing is, which is a very interesting trend these days, is the cloud, as I've said before, and it's old news, but it's going to keep being a trend in the next couple of years, especially with all the other companies and organizations that are investing so much time and effort to keep that and to develop that. One of the main reasons, as I've said before, is cost saving, because even you're a medium or small medium bank, you cannot invest the same level of security breaches, of security controls that Amazon could invest, because Amazon already have thousands of clients out there. Now, the challenge is, even if you're using Amazon to set up the right policies and procedures and to make sure that Amazon is really protecting your data, and if something bad happens, how you protect and conclude, I would say, or include your data in one place, and how do you investigate that and respond to that. But yet, having those clouds solutions out there could give you a lot of, I would say, focus on your own business rather than trying to chase other attackers and attack vectors out there. The last and not least about location is the cross-organization perimeters, and we talked a little bit about it when we talked about remote working, but also, and this is an important topic, about what is happening out there with third-party vendors and how should they get and connect to your systems. And we all know that this is something that will keep working, will keep being on top of the cybersecurity guys and risk management guys out there, because working with third-party vendors, and we are familiar with some of the breaches out there, and I think the most common one was the breach of Target about 6 or 7 years ago, when somebody from the outside, through their kind of air-conditioned vendor, breached their systems and stole more than 200 million credit card numbers, and that was back then a huge issue for most of the, I would say, organizations out there in the market. So how do you deal with your third-party vendors? How do you make sure that their data or your data on their environment is safe? But not only that, the fact that you're giving the third-party vendor to access your systems, how do you make sure that this is the right third-party vendor and nobody use their infrastructure in order to breach your organization? So those are some of the major, very interesting trends out there. And there are some very interesting solutions. I hope we can get there even maybe in the next session we're gonna have. Next is about security organization evolution. And here, this is something I would like to spend some time and to tell you and to share with you what is happening in that sense. And when we're talking about the security organization evolution, how do you make sure that now your organization is secured? And I guess most of you understands that as long as cybersecurity is trend and is one of the major risks, pretty much number one, number two in the last 3-4 years, as top executive answer all the surveys out there, they need to invest a lot of time and efforts in order to do that. So suddenly, organizations, and not only banks and major insurance companies, even retails and of course some of the critical infrastructure out there, they setting up a cybersecurity committee that reports to the board. And suddenly, the board directors, who are mostly focusing on business, needs to hear about cyber risks, need to prioritize, and need to guide their technical team. What should they do? How should they do it? But believe it or not all the board members, especially some of the, we don't have any white hair guys besides myself here, but Chandra and Prasad looks very, very young. But imagine that those guys, they need to understand the threat. They need to prioritize and to invest money on what should they do, and they need to ask for results. So how the heck should they do it? They don't understand cyber, they don't know it. So there are few, I would say, trends out there. One is what we call security assessments. But security assessment is a process, or a one-time thing that some of the big four, like KPMG, like PwC, or other cybersecurity boutique companies are doing, and usually it's a point in time, and which means that whenever you've done this assessment, it's relevant for that day, that week, that month. And since we talked a little bit about this intelligence and the threat landscape evolution earlier, we know that the risks and vulnerabilities that are relevant for one day, maybe a month after, are not that relevant. Maybe 6 months after, you've got new technologies, new tools and solutions in your organization, so suddenly you need to do all over the assessment again. So how do you do that? And this brings me to some of the things that I've mentioned earlier about Cytigic and the company that we've sold to MasterCard. And the idea is to have a risk-based approach, which means how do you identify the major trends, the major risks out there in specific time frame, and how do you do this kind of continuous assessment in a way that you can prioritize your investment. You can prioritize where to invest and what should you do in order to create the best, I would say, solutions and to protect your organization the best way you can. So suddenly we are talking about one of the trends that we are seeing nowadays in the market, that organizations are saying, okay, we've got this kind of assessments or this manual processes that some of the big companies are doing, but we would like to change the paradigm. We would like to do a continuous monitoring process. We would like to do a risk-based approach. We would like to understand the risks as they've changed and how our organization is ready to face those risks. And if the risk it becomes something that really happens, how should we respond to that? So those are some of the trends that are out there, and some of the organizations are changing, and believe it or not, it's not an easy change, because to change your way of thinking about risk-based approach and how should you keep those analysis and assessments in real time is a major challenge for some of the organizations who are global, who are facing different risks in different global locations, with what is happening out there in the world, especially these days with some of the changes about remote working, about different I would say technologies moving to the cloud, the crypto, and kind of I'm trying to connect all the dots that I've mentioned earlier. So this is a very interesting trend that we're going to see in the next couple of years, and how organizations are going to deal with it. And if you have any good ideas, I'm sure that could be the $1 billion company. So make sure to keep in touch. Third, and not last, as I've said, last but not least, the security technology evolution. And here there are very interesting things that are happening that I'd like to share with you. We talked a little bit about the workload shift to the cloud. I was trying to give you some of the things that are happening out there and how should we deal with it. But I would say the trend that moving into the cloud or transforming into the cloud is going to keep being with us for at least the next couple of years. And organizations need to invest a lot of time and efforts to identify if and how and what should they transform to the cloud. And by the same time, most of the companies that we are working with these days, they are doing kind of a hybrid. It's not like, okay, so we're going to move everything to the cloud and that's it. suddenly you need to decide, okay, we're going to move this system which deals with clients or customers to the cloud, because that's going to be our best use of cloud and save money and cost saving. But we're going to keep having those internal systems or our financial data or our very sensitive data in the organization. So suddenly we have a different challenges. Suddenly we have different systems, different databases in different locations with different vendors, and we need to make sure they are protected. So we call this the hybrid kind of conceptual thinking, but these hybrid solutions usually make it a little bit more complicated, because now you have different security controls over the cloud, and you may have different security controls within your campus. So how do you deal with that? How do you do this kind of assessment? How do you deal with specific breach if something bad happens, or if you just suspect that? How do you deal with those hybrid solutions that in some cases you have packets of data within your campus and other data within the cloud vendor? How do you combine that together, and how do you protect it? So those are, very interesting openings for new solutions, new processes and technologies. And this is a very interesting trend, because most of the organizations out there, and especially the big ones, are not just migrating into the cloud with 100%. And I know Prasad is very involved in that field these days. And if you'd like to share, or Chandra, if you'd like to share something from your perspective, I'll be more than happy to share that. I need to get my sippers.
I think definitely, the so-called cloud is really, really changing things, and I appreciate that. And a cloud, and the investments in the cloud is becoming too much right now, and pretty much everything is moving at the same time. There are certain systems that have to be on site and all that. Definitely, it is increasing the so-called hybrid approach, and it's definitely bringing challenges to this, and also opportunities. I would agree with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that I've mentioned earlier, it's about confidentiality and privacy. And I covered that earlier, and I'd like to leave some time for questions, so I'll try to rush up a little bit here. But one of the things that I'd like to mention is attack simulation tools and AI. And I guess, you cannot have a presentation without saying machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics. So here I've said everything here, but it's interesting to understand that within cyber, the attack simulation tools and artificial intelligence is extremely important, because suddenly, and I guess some of you are familiar with the word penetration testing and how you're trying to penetrate the organization from the outside with a license. And we're doing a lot of that lately. But now you need to not just doing, a project here or a project there every couple of years. Now, most of the organizations that we start working with are trying to do a continuous attack simulation and a continuous penetration testing all over, all the time, trying to reach into their network, into their data systems, into their databases, in order to make sure that they are protected in a way. But in order to do that, there are some way to use artificial intelligence and to use some kind of, I would say, machine learning capabilities in order to make this process efficient and to create some better way to penetrate those organizations, or to think like the hackers or the attackers are thinking. So one of the interesting trends that we're seeing these days is, from one hand side, the hackers and the attackers are using artificial intelligence in order to create better techniques and tools in order to penetrate to the organizations. But in the same time, we, as I would say, the good hackers or the security companies are trying to use the same technology in order to be faster than them, to create some controls in order to protect those organizations. So this is a very interesting trend. We can see some very interesting companies nowadays gaining those kind of capabilities and some very interesting move into that area. And remember, up until now, or up until a couple of years ago, it was Bank of America is doing penetration testing project for 3 months, and now they are quiet for the next year. And in a year or 2 years, they are trying to do it again. But nowadays, it's going to be an attack simulation tool in a continuous process and not just one time, and that's it. So this is a very interesting trend, and it opens a lot of capabilities and opportunities for companies in the market in that field. So if you have, and I know that the University of Emerging Technologies have some very interesting courses about penetration testing and about how to learn how to penetrate or how to do the good hacker. And this is a very interesting trend that you should follow. I hope there are going to be some questions about it, but if not, I'm going to get back to that in the Q&A session, but I'm going to leave some time here. One of the topics I like to cover was about cybersecurity education and about market opportunity. And here it's a very interesting quote by Venture that was published recently, that there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs by 2021. Just to give you a sense, 3.5 million is like, Prasad, help me with the math here, it's about 40 different huge football arena. Only with cyber guys, only, by the way, in the US. I'm not even talking about the global, and this is a huge peak from 1 million positions in 2014. So we're talking about more than 3.5 for the last 6 years. And what does it mean? It means that if you are a network guy, if you are an operational system guy, if you are a programmer, if you are even, somebody who is dealing with some specific data or a data scientist, suddenly you cannot do your job correctly if you don't understand cyber. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to, do cyber all day long, but you need to understand it. And some of those positions are focusing on cyber. And this just leverage the capabilities and the opportunities that we are having these days around cybersecurity. And this is even leverage some of the capabilities or the importance of the education that we are talking about these days. And as I said before, it opens a very, I would say, extremely interesting market for you guys to get into. So how do you get those, education? How do you educate yourself? How do you keep training yourself? And some of that I covered earlier about, the global certification. Even if you're a bachelor degree, if you have your bachelor degree or your master degree in computer science, or in even, some of the universities nowadays have a specific degree with cybersecurity. Yet you still have to keep educating yourself with the new technologies, with the new breaches, with the new attack vectors, attack methods. So those global certifications are extremely important because they not just, you're not just going through that test and you're getting your diploma and that's it. If you want to be all the crazy letters I've shared with you earlier about the CISSP, CISA, CSAM, CIRISC, you have to have, as we called here, continuous training during the year and at least 60 hours or 40 hours every year just to make sure to maintain those certifications. So this is extremely important, and it's not the same like getting your bachelor degree or your master degree where you finalize, you have this crazy ceremony and that's it. So this is extremely important because you need to keep training yourself. We talked a little bit about the Emerging Technology University, and I know that Prasad will cover that later on, but we are offering so many opportunities for you guys here, and there are so many interesting courses and diplomas and continuous education, as I've mentioned. One of the other opportunities out there is vendors, and I urge you to log in to some of the very interesting vendors out there, like Checkpoint, like Palo Alto, like CyberArk, you know, the big major cybersecurity companies for products out there, and get into their education and learn some of their products. And although one product is not exactly like the other one, but if you're trying to understand network security, so some of the products out there gives you a very good starting point. If you're trying to understand encryption, if you're trying to understand databases, some of the companies could give you so many interesting education opportunity about that. And of course, you know, the big four, the consulting firm, whenever you're joining one of those companies and boutique consulting firm companies, you're gaining a lot of training, a lot of education about that. But in most cases, you start that with your university degree and how should you deal with that. And this is one of the opportunities that the University of Emerging Technologies are giving you. Let me stop here. I know that we are pretty much running out of time, and I want to leave some time for Q&A and some time for Prasad to cover some of the universities. So let me stop here and maybe open the floor for Shivani and some of the queries that you have, guys.
Thank you so much, sir, for the very insightful lecture. I hope all of you enjoyed the session. I surely did. So we have a lot of questions raised by many of the members in our audience. Thank you all for being so attentive, but due to the time limitations we have, we'll be able to answer a few for now, and then we'll be answering the remaining ones individually after. So we have our first question. Could you please tell us the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing?
Sure, thank you, Shivani. So as I've mentioned, penetration testing is a process that some organizations are trying to use a good hacker to try and penetrate to the organization. So as an example, they are trying to identify specific vulnerabilities, and I'll get to that definition in a second, and to use that vulnerability in order to penetrate the organization and to show you, hey, we were using a specific username, password, or a specific vulnerability in order to penetrate and to breach the organization. Vulnerability management is a different process. It's something that you as an organization is running, usually internally, on your operational system, on your servers, on your database, on your solutions and pieces of code, and you're trying to run and to identify specific vulnerabilities before somebody from the external is using them. So vulnerability management is a process that you're running few tools, trying to find those vulnerabilities, and have a process in place to have some patching, to implement some tools in order to close or to deal with those vulnerabilities. The penetration testing, as I've mentioned earlier, is a different process where you're trying to use those vulnerabilities in order to prove that you can penetrate and you can get this data or you could breach the organization.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you explained in the presentation about 3.5 million unfulfilled jobs in cybersecurity by 2021. Sir, Mr. Jarwal in the audience wants to know, what are the career opportunities available in cybersecurity? He's a recent college graduate and he's interested in knowing where should he start.
So thank you, Mr. for the question. It's a very interesting question because to start with security or cybersecurity, there's so many different ways you could start with. There are four major, I would say, starting points that one can start his career there. And after fulfilling that, you could, move between different fields of expertise. So the first thing is network. You can become a network expert, a network architecture. You need to learn about network, and then you could pretty much focusing in on all the field of firewalls and different application firewalls and different things that could deal with the network security part. And this is a very, I would say. Sorry, you were saying something, Shivani?
Thank you, sir. I'm sure this is going to help all the recent college graduates who are looking for a project.
Sorry, I didn't finish the answer. Sorry, Shivani, I thought you were saying something. Let me just finish the answer in a second, and then Prasad could take that. So the first thing is network security. The second is application and becoming a programmer. And nowadays, there's a lot of application security needs out there. And every application, whether it's a web-based, whether it's an on-prem application, there's a lot of application security needs and demands. The third is all about policy, procedures, compliance issues. And there, if you become somebody who understands regulations, who understands the rules, and there are so many standards in place like COVID and NIST and depending on your sector, there's so many relevant compliance issues and regulations that you need to comply with. That could be also a very interesting start point for you to gain. And last but not least, we're talking about the physical security, which is also a very interesting position, and where I'm most of them, or at least in the beginning, some of my colleagues started as a physical security expert and then developed themselves into the logic world, into the cyber world, which could be very interesting for you as well. So it's a very interesting question where to start with, but I would say start with your heart, start where the things are most interested to you between application, network, compliance, and databases or whatever. And then after you're gaining some more expertise there, you could, continue to the path that you're most interested with. I hope it answers the question.
Thank you, sir. So we have our next question. How do we protect sensitive information handled and stored by third-party vendors?
That's a good question. This is the $1 million question, and it's not easy. And I'm going to need 2 weeks just to answer the first topic. But let's start. So there are a few things that one needs to do in order to protect the data from third-party vendors. First, you need to make sure that you're following the trend of need-to-know basis, which means if you have a vendor that getting access into your systems, make sure to give them access only to the specific part of the organizations that they need to use for their day-to-day job. And we know this principle of need-to-know basis from different fields in our life. Second, there are some things you could do in order to create some kind of, I would say, assessment in order to make sure that the third-party vendor is protected. And those are the things that many big four companies and few other companies are dealing these days, and they're giving kind of a score to any other third-party vendor who are getting into your organization. And not only that, they have a lot of procedures to do kind of an assessment every year or every couple of years, depending with their risk level, in order to protect or to identify the risk of that vendor. Above all that, there are some mechanisms that you could make sure that if this specific vendor is getting or accessing your systems, you can protect or manipulate some of the data to know if something bad happens and to identify if it was that vendor or the other vendors. And it's interesting to say, but take Walmart as an example here in the US. they have more than 30,000 vendors. So imagine dealing with so many vendors out there who needs to get access to your systems, who needs to send you bills and to send you the volumes or stuff like that. There's so many challenges that you need to get there. So between the assessments, the different things that we've talked earlier in my lecture about the continuous assessment and controls, maturity, I would say, processes. There are a few other solutions, but I think this is going to be a good start to deal with, and then we could talk a little bit more about encryption, about to protect the data itself, and a few other mechanisms, but that could be a good start point.
Thank you, sir. Our last question for the day. Can you tell us how does artificial intelligence impact cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned that a little bit about the last topic, where I've said we are using, I mean, we all know that some of the advanced attackers are using artificial intelligence in order to make a better tools for them to identify vulnerabilities much faster and to use those vulnerabilities to hack into your systems. We, as you know, the cyber defenders, trying to use the same mechanisms to better understand how the attacker are thinking, what kind of vulnerabilities they're trying to use, and I'll give you a couple of examples. We're trying to create an environment that simulate the whole organization, but this is a honeypot environment that gives the attacker the capabilities or the feeling that he is hacking to the organization. But in the meantime, what we're doing, we are isolating them in that environment, and we are kind of attacking them back in order to protect the organization, in order to take them out from the network. So there are different mechanisms that we can use artificial intelligence to identify specific behavior of the attacker and to use the same tools and techniques in order to take them out of the network. But this is one example. I'm sure there are so many others, and we can talk a little bit more about that maybe in our next session.
Thank you, sir. I hope Mr. Zandani was able to answer all of your questions. We have a few more questions pending, but due to the time constraints, we won't be taking any more questions for now. We'll be answering the remaining questions individually after the session. Now I want to invite Mr. Prasad Maudri, CEO, University of Emerging Technologies, to deliver his speech on opportunities in emerging technologies. So please.
Thank you, Shivani. Thanks, Shay. You know, Shay and I go back way far. You know, Shay is a brother from another mother. You know, he and I were classmates. We traveled the world, and Shay is a very modest gentleman. And in fact, I've attended many of his lectures. In fact, I traveled all the way to Morocco and Spain and all that, you know, to accompany him on some of the occasions and where he was speaking at international organizations, all that. But he, you know, what he did was, you know, he put in simple words, you know, what the opportunities are, what things are, etc. In fact, as Shay was saying, there is a lot of overlap between other emerging technologies and cybersecurity as well. For example, the software-defined networks, you have a lot of pattern recognition with using AI, ML, and all that stuff. There's lots of things that you could do, and in fact, University of Emerging Technologies itself has, you know, some of these cybersecurity certificate courses that can be that it wants to impart, and people can enroll and get a lot more insight into it, and plus certification as well. But and also, as Shay was saying, there's a lot of opportunity in cybersecurity. I'm talking about 3.5 million people they need, and where do they get them from? You know, obviously India is one of the countries that they really look up to. This is where, and also there are many kinds of people. You don't, not everybody has to be super duper in cybersecurity, but a lot of things that you could do. And I encourage a lot of people to reach out again to Shivani, to reach out to Shay, and he will be very kind to answer your questions, right? So that's being said, I just wanted to quickly go through what we do at the Emerging Tech University, and how we work through that. And can and what is that we really bring to the fore, right? So that is what I wanted to talk again. This is University of Emerging Technologies is actually powered and governed by a nonprofit called the Emerging Tech Foundation. And when some of the certifications that we want to give both from Emerging Tech, University of Emerging Technologies, and also the foundation. So we basically what we're trying to do is to get the E5 mission, E to the power of 5, evangelize, educate, empower, enlighten, and engage about emerging technologies. That's what we wanted to do. And then the question is again, what exactly University of Emerging Tech does? It's a not-for-credit university. We are actually trying to get a accreditation as well, so that we can give some real degrees as BS and MS and all that. But right now, what we wanted to do is to have short certificate courses, as Shay and the rest of the people are saying. It will be more like internships, where you learn and you do a practical project. And then also these small ones, small short certificate courses would be called as nano degrees, and you can bundle them. For example, cybersecurity, there are 2-3 different kinds of courses are there, and you can bundle them as a micro degree, and you can directly get into jobs, because it's all role based and deployable skills, right? So that's what we wanted to do. And also we are trying to get into upskilling the people who are already working, and they're getting into more, upgrading themselves and getting into more and more deeper into their respective technologies. And also one more thing, although we say it's emerging technologies, what we really believe in is to create more role-based deployable skills, more applied technologies, not just theoretical technology. So what we are looking at is, not only just emerging tech, also something like as simple as SAP courses, or maybe Salesforce courses, maybe digital marketing, all the stuff, anything to do in and around the technology, and which can create jobs, etc. As I said, people can upskill themselves, and there is a huge opportunity in executive education. So right now, most of the executive education goes into management. And what we want to do is to get into engineering as well. So we want to actually bridge, how do we use technology in supply chain management? And how do we optimize the management? How do we get into, let's say, blockchain for counterfeiting, all that stuff, right? To stop the counterfeiting, etc. So there are so many things that we can do, and we are also working on that. And right now we are mostly focusing on the short certificate courses, internships, and for the people who are students, or who just came out of their college degree, and they're trying to get into job market. So we want to give that. Right. And also the other things we have now, as we said, we're also looking for an accreditation where we can come up with a BS and MS degrees, all that stuff. And there's one more segment that we are coming up, and maybe Chandra is the right guy later on to talk to you guys, is because we wanted to actually help people to teach certain courses like AI ML, part of their BTech course. BE course, we can actually teach, and we take care of all the labs and teaching and all that stuff. The colleges, who are struggling to get right resources to teach and also man the labs and all that, can take advantage from the University of Emerging Technologies. This is one more thing. So we are offering on all emerging tech where it's very difficult to get faculty and the right labs and all that stuff, right? So that's one more thing that we're doing. So these are our offerings from the University of Emerging Technologies. But the core principle of us is to have an experiential learning. That means anything that you learn, mere theoretical learning will not help. So we wanted to have an experience-based learning, that is doing projects, either top down or bottom up. And then that's how you understand, and you also relate the subject that you're learning to a real life example. So that's what we do. We are bringing projects from real life, like companies like Data Magnum and all that stuff. So we're trying to do that. So always it is always an experiential learning. And also, as I said, our goal is to have a role-based education. If you are trying to become a cybersecurity guy, we will try to get you to the cybersecurity education, role-based, which you can use and all that stuff. And as we said, because these are all projects, you learn by doing, and also some practitioner level skills. And then most importantly, we have live classes. And most of the other outlets right now, like Coursera and Unacademy and Upgrades and all that stuff, they have classes very impersonal, right? They're not live classes. And what happens with that is it's very difficult to follow up and come out finishing the classes. But we want to have a live classes, and if you miss it, you have a recording then. And most importantly, especially when you're doing an online course, you need a support. You need support, right? So you need 24/7 live labs. Okay, so the laboratories are there right now. We have our own custom laboratories, and 24/7 there will be academic enablers who will actually help you to get it. So it's very, very useful for the people who are remotely learning and from home, where it's very difficult to interact with the rest of the people, and the camaraderie is not possible, right? So we definitely want to encourage people to take this advantage. This in fact makes or breaks a lot of things. The support is what is really needed in online education, which is very much missing from other outlets. And also because we have our own labs on the cloud, we call them computer on the cloud, the personalized machines, so that you don't have to worry about your environment, your machine, your not an antivirus, your Java version, blah blah blah, all that stuff you can avoid, and have our own labs to work and avoid all the other problems. And also because this is governed by the Emerging Tech Foundation, where the industry orientation is there. That means that whatever is being taught is actually thought after by the industry experts, and so it's more democratized curriculum. So it's very relevant to what you work. So industry orientation is there. And also we are trying to teach some people skills, how to face an interview, how to behave in a group setting, and all that stuff. We are bringing that as part of education, because that's very much needed. And then also we are trying to give some career prep support. And as I always said, all these short courses, we call them nano degrees, can be bundled into micro degrees. So that's what these are the unique selling features we have. As I said, the immediate thing that you could do is to sign up for internships, short course and internship. So we will get a real life project, and you can get a certification by the foundation and the university both. And you can actually do a real life project and get that internship, and we'll certify that. And similarly, we have, if somebody wants to have a full stack Java development course, we can get that. And we have something specific for the oil and gas and all that. And we also have some SAP courses, whatever you want. Basically, we are covered, and there's a big list, Shivani or even Chandra can share with you guys. But we are increasing the number of them. You can even subscribe to University of Emerging Technologies monthly, and then you can learn as many as you want. So, but that's the whole thing. The most important thing that also we are looking at is a virtual real-time shareable whiteboard. So in fact, when you're talking to people, it's always, we are showing PowerPoints. It's very difficult to do PowerPoint, interaction, right? It's not really interactive, it's one-sided. And so what we have, we are bringing to the table is a virtual real-time share board, where everybody can write on the board, and in fact, board over board, you can need an infinite canvas, real-time collaboration, and enterprise grade security. And also the funny thing is, you can annotate the audio. That means if you found something interesting at the 12th minute, you can annotate that, 14th minute, 15th minute, 20th minute. And a number of people can do that, so that you can easily replay it and understand. And also one funny thing is, you can bring back your old discussion and start from there, rather than starting all over again. So it's very, very, very useful. And this is one more big feature nobody else has it, and then we have it. It's already integrated into the learning management system. This is very, very useful. And again, as I said, we are certifying this with the Emerging Tech Foundation. It's going to be very useful. And in fact, Emerging Tech Foundation is trying to work with the European Union and other such organizations to be their emerging tech certifier, right? So it will be very definitely very soon. It will be a very recognized, foundation to certify. And again, I really, really thank Shay Zandani to come over today and give such a humble presentation. And he made things look very easy for you. And we apologize for that technological issue with the video. But I think irrespective of that, it's a wonderful presentation. And I thank all of you and congratulate all of you for being part of this Global Emerging Tech Summit 21 in association with the Computer Society of India and Global Engineering Deans Council and IFES, and of course the Emerging Tech Foundation. So we are very, very thankful to you, and thanks very much, Shivani, for conducting such a wonderful session. And again, I thank, although in absence, Ala Ashmawi for rendering such a good introduction to this conference today. But I hope you all have enjoyed. One more time, I thank everybody here for being a part of this and making it successful. And I leave it back to you, Shivani. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of University of Emerging Technologies and our key sponsors, I would also like to thank our speakers and our attendees for making this summit happen. Without your support, this wouldn't have been possible. This coming Saturday on April 24 at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, we have Mr. James D'Souza presenting his views on cloud computing deployments and Amazon Web Services. Please visit our website for more information. That's it from my side today. Hoping to see you all next Saturday. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, bye.
Thank you, guys.